Anything in particular you want to talk about?
No.
Okay. Anything in particular you don't want to talk about?
No.
Okay.
I do like that question, though.
Hey,
you should attempt to prove me wrong.
That is as important as what to talk about. As sometimes you need to know what not to talk about. And it's literally shaped like a dad bod. It's small at the top and gets fat, and then round at the bottom.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I wanted to be a hacker. I think I'd watched too many movies or something. And, this was back in the days of Napster and all of that.
Angelina Jolie was hot,
yes.
So I can understand wanting to be a hacker.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know you scuba dive.
Oh, yeah.
Scuba dive, scuba dove,
scuba dive,
scuba diving.
Scuba.
Welcome to the Smokey Guys. I'm CR Parsons. I'm one of the Smokey Guys.
I'm Brady Deetz.
And
Smoke Cigars.
He is not the Smokey guy you're used to, is he? Our buddy Kevin Price is off playing a gig tonight in Missouri, I believe it is. So this was going to be the only chance this weekend that I was going to have to record. So I'm glad you showed up here so that we could record together, because otherwise it just wasn't happening. We were going to have to skip an entire week. So, have you watched any of the podcasts? Have you ever seen one?
I have not had the experience yet, no.
Well, then you're just like most of our viewers.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't watched it either. We do have some other people in the room. We've got Kate over there.
Hi.
Kate, say hi.
Hello.
Kate is Brady's significant other. And we've got Kevin over here, our producer.
Hello, hello.
And you know Kevin because he's here a lot. Never on camera. I can't get him on camera to save my life. I asked Kate if she wanted to be on camera, and she's like, no, I do not. So, was that surprising?
No, not at all. She hates it. Like, all through COVID, she would refuse to get on the Zoom calls with friends and all that. She hates every bit of it. I think if she ever takes a remote job, she'll die.
It'll just kill her to be on camera, huh?
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't have that compunction. I've never had that compunction.
I used to, but it's easier now. Like,
yeah.
I just spend half of my day on camera doing meetings and crap. So.
Well, and after COVID, when you saw everybody else on camera and saw how stupid they looked,
oh yeah,
you're like, well, I don't look as stupid as I thought I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're doing this without KP tonight. So we wish him well. Hopefully he will survive Missouri and make it back to Oklahoma in at least one piece. They were doing a big thing at Golden City, Colorado, their harvest days. Of that part of Missouri is very rural and agrarian, and so it's always a big festival every year. So he was doing that with our buddy Hank Wilhelm. I believe you met Hank,
yeah,
because he's been out at Classic with us before. You met Hank because he did our live show.
Yeah,
that you recorded.
He opened for you guys.
Yeah, he was the opening act. Brady here, among all of the other things he does, he's a man of many talents, but he does live audio recording. And he recorded our live album that we are finishing up and hope to have out before too long. How was that experience? You've recorded other people live. How terrible were we?
Oh man. No, it was fun. It was a challenging project for sure. But I actually learned a lot through it because it's the first time where I've done like a full hour-long album.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually like just a few songs or something like that, and so like getting a cohesive album together was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well that's good. That's good.
For the first time, used a lot of tape emulation to get like that old saturated sound, which was a lot of fun.
That's very cool. It's cool that you can do that. That you can, and it's funny to me that you have to dirty up the sound to make it sound better.
Yeah.
Because you would think, as we progressed through technology, we went from the old, not even vinyl, the old wax that just sounded awful because it was so dirty. and then you moved to vinyl, which was still a little dirty, and then we moved to tape, which was a little less dirty, and it kept getting slightly better and slightly better and slightly cleaner until we got to digital, and then all of a sudden you're going, this is too clean.
Yep.
We're wanting that dirty a little bit.
Yeah, and the boards went the same way. I mean, you had like APIs and NEVs, which had crunchy preamps, and then you went to SSLs, which were really super clean, and that was like at the beginning of the digital era and all of that. And now everybody's trying to go back to that old vintage crunch sound.
Yeah. It's funny to me how many artists are actually going back to studios that are recording on tape again. Now it's hard to get a hold of the tape. I think I saw an interview with what's his name from Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. He said if you can find tape, it's really expensive, and if you find it, he's probably already bought it. But he apparently rounded up the market on as many of those multi-track tapes as he could get his hands on several years ago. So how did you get into that? What brought you to digital recording?
Oh man, are we gonna do a recording episode? This is great.
We're gonna talk a little bit about it.
So I was in like middle school and playing guitar and trombone and that type of stuff, and my dad bought like a little MIDI keyboard, and so my first introduction to that was a MIDI keyboard going in over the game port on the PC back then, because like USB didn't even really exist yet.
Right.
And so I started recording MIDI into an old piece of software, the first version of it called Cakewalk.
I remember Cakewalk.
Yeah, and so that was the beginning, and then so I started putting audio into it through my sound card, so I kind of had 2 channels coming in that way, and then eventually probably 2002, 2003, 4, somewhere around in there, I bought a little 2-channel interface from Presonus. It was Firewire, and from there I just kept on going up and up, and now I've got like 24 channels or so. And
yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Wow, that's been a while.
It has.
So you've been messing with it for a long time.
Yeah, and like it's changed so much. It's so much better now.
Oh.
But,
dude, I got out of the actual recording part of it years ago, because years ago I did a lot of recording. I worked with Cakewalk, did a lot of MIDI stuff, had a MIDI keyboard and all of that. But back then the sounds sounded so fake that it wasn't what I was after. Because I play guitar and sing, and so I wanted and I do mostly country, so I wanted something that sounded real.
yeah.
And that just wasn't it. Well, years later, I decided to get back into the idea of recording at home, if nothing else, as a writing tool. And when I started pulling MIDI up again, everybody's talking about using MIDI, and I'm like, MIDI sucked. Why would people still be using MIDI? Holy mackerel! What you can do now is unbelievable.
Yeah, those virtual instruments are amazing, and it's like MIDI is just a trigger for samples now, and it's amazing.
Not just a trigger, but you've got all of the different expressions that you can trigger along with the sound itself, and that makes such a world of difference, because you can actually get that expression in there as opposed to just the note on a certain beat.
Exactly.
And it's wild what it can do.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. What are you smoking?
This is the Plasencia Alma Fuerte. Went fancy tonight.
So we do have Kevin in the house, because that's his favorite cigar. And I don't know how many times that has been his answer when I go, "What are you smoking?"
No, sorry to disappoint.
No, that's not a disappointment at all. It just re-emphasizes that is a spectacular cigar.
It really is.
So is that one of your go-tos? Is that a fave?
I wish I could afford it to be a go-to. It is a favorite, though. I usually splurge for it like once a month or so. I like to buy them and age them.
Okay.
And then save them up and have them for a nice night or something.
So I assume you've had one fresh off the shelf. I'm not going to say
Yeah.
fresh off the roller, but fresh off the shelf. How long have you aged one for?
This one's probably a little over a year old.
Wow.
Yeah,
you're a better man than I don't be able to hold on to one for over a year.
Well, yeah, like so usually like when I buy them, I'll put one in a drawer and I save that drawer for a year, and then the others I just smoke because they're cigars. They're meant to be smoked.
Exactly. Well, see, I just can't hold on to cigars that long because I look in my humidor and I'm like, ooh, I've got these and that sounds okay, but I've got that and that's really, I just can't bring myself to just leave one sit for that long.
I get it.
What's the difference in off the shelf and aged for a year?
So mostly it's just like a little bit more mellow, less I don't know. I describe it as like fermentation flavor going on. They're nicer after they've set. I think that a year is probably more than enough. Like 6 months is usually plenty for these. Like they're really good.
I get
right
that.
Off the shelf.
Oh yeah, they are. They're absolutely spectacular right off the shelf. I think Kevin's favorite is that octagon or hexagon or whatever the multi-sided thing. I still don't understand how they roll those things and get that accuracy on them.
Well, I talk about putting things in your mouth. I just don't care for the feel of it in my mouth. I like them brown. What can I say? Like box press are okay too, but the octagon, I don't like the feel of that at all.
Kate, he likes them round and big and thick and juicy.
Yeah. Darker is better.
Well, I agree with the other cigar. I think it's called the Sixto, and I love it too.
It is a great cigar. It's a great smoke. What are you pairing it with tonight?
This is Devron. It's I think it's a 15-year Scotch. Really good Scotch for the price point. Ball's like $40. It's my favorite Scotch.
Devron, I don't know that one. What do you know about it?
Oh man, don't ask me regions. I have no idea.
That doesn't matter. I mean, if you know, you know. If you don't, it's not a big deal.
I'll tell you the flavor profile.
Okay.
I don't like smoky or peaty, so it's like more like a Glenlivet or something like that.
Okay.
It's like most people know what Glenlivet tastes like. It tastes like that, but a little bit better and cheaper.
Okay. Little brine to it, maybe.
Yeah, a little salty, a lot of like floral and fruity flavors coming out.
Very cool, very cool. I'll have to try that one sometime because I was not a peaty guy until years into drinking Scotch, and then all of a sudden somehow I developed a taste for peat. Because I used to be one of those guys. If I got a really peaty Scotch, I would just not drink it. I'd let it sit on the shelf because I didn't want to taste the Scotch 3 days later, having not drank it for 3 days.
Yep.
And that's what some of those really peaty ones can do.
Yeah.
But now, I love a good peaty Scotch.
Yeah, a lot of people start out and like somebody will recommend Lefroy. I think that's a terrible recommendation for somebody starting out with Scotch. But like, I guess if you're into that, then you're going to be into all the Scotches.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, if you can start there, you're way beyond where most people are going to be interested in Scotch. Well, I'm smoking a Dad Bod. Have you had one of these?
I have not.
This is Punch. This is one of their special editions. They put it out just before Father's Day this year. It's literally shaped like a Dad Bod. It's small at the top and gets fat and then rounds around at the bottom. They're really good smokes. They're like $8 a piece or less. But because of, I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, Kevin and I have, but because of the shape, it changes flavor significantly as you smoke it because you go from a much bigger ring gauge to a much smaller ring gauge as it goes down, and it's just a really good solid smoke.
That's cool, yeah.
And then I had my buddy Pete, who was producer Pete on the last episode, picked up some bourbon cream for me. This is the Buffalo Trace bourbon cream. He found that. That's kind of hard to find around here. I don't know if you've had it before. Are you an Irish cream guy at all?
I am, yeah.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
It's just a nice bourbon cream. I use it in coffee a lot. So that's what I'm smoking and drinking tonight. Now, I know you're into other things other than digital recording.
Yeah.
Things like, I don't know, fast cars.
Fast cars, cybersecurity, scuba diving, yeah, all kinds of things.
I didn't know you scuba dive.
Oh, yeah.
Scuba dove?
Scuba dives.
Scuba diving?
Scuba.
Scuba?
Scuba, yeah, I scuba.
You scuba. There you go. There you go. You scuba, I scuba, we scuba.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know you did that. How long have you been doing that?
Since about 2006.
Okay.
Yeah. So my first trip was to Cozumel. I almost died.
How did you almost die?
Well, I was not trained. So I went on this trip. I had just graduated from high school, and my parents took me out there, and they hired this woman who claimed to be a dive master and was going to teach us on the shore how to dive, and then take us out for a dive. This is not how you do it. Don't do this. You're supposed to go through courses and get certified.
Right.
So, we do all this stuff on the shore. We get out into wade out into the water, and we practice a little bit. And she's like, yeah, you guys are great to go. And so we, go out to, it's like 30 or 40 feet of water. It's fairly safe in retrospect, but I didn't know much back then. And so we're swimming along, and my weight belt just slips off of my waist.
Okay.
And so now, I'm flying to the surface.
Right.
I'm freaking out because I'm all worried about the bends and everything, which at that depth, and the amount of time we were down, it was perfectly fine.
Right.
But she grabs my ankle, and then that moment, I throw my regulator out of my mouth, so now I have no air, my mask is off, I'm being dragged down to the bottom of the ocean by some woman I've never met before.
Oh my goodness.
It was very scary. So she got her regulator in my mouth, and we buddy breathed for a minute, and then abort the dive. But I was unwilling to let that be the last time I dove.
Gotcha.
Came back to Oklahoma, got properly trained after learning more about how that was supposed to actually go.
Right.
And I've got 50 to 75 dives at this point.
Very cool.
I've done Belize and Cozumel quite a bit, and then some really nasty lakes here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma's lakes are not particularly good for diving, other than we've got a couple that are deep enough that you can actually get a deep water certification. What is it, 10 killer?
10 killer, yeah.
Yeah, 10 killers. I don't remember how deep it is, but it's deep enough you can get a deep water certification in it.
I think the key to learning to scuba dive is to learn in a lake with low visibility. If you go down there and you can't see more than a foot in front of you, and you can keep it together, you're going to hit the ocean and have infinite visibility, and it's going to be totally calm.
Very true.
It's so cool.
Very true. Very true. So what's the coolest dive you've ever done?
The coolest dive I've done is probably in Belize. I saw, for the first time, got to see sea turtles, and then dolphins were there too. And this wasn't a lot of dive sites they'll chum and all of that. This was not like that. This was all natural, and these weren't the dive master's pets or anything. These animals just show up.
Right.
And it was just the coolest thing. The most wild thing is hearing dolphins underwater, communicating. It's really interesting to experience.
I'll bet. I did a lot of snorkeling before I ever scuba dove. I still don't know how to say that, and it's going to drive me nuts the entire time. I'm just going to say that now. But my cousin had the best snorkeling story ever. He went to Hawaii, and he's not a big ocean person. He lives in Mississippi, but he's not a big ocean person. Hadn't been out, didn't know that much about it. And so he goes out into the ocean, and he's looking around, and he sees this fish, and it's the brightest, most beautiful, brightly colored fish he'd ever seen. And he pops up out of the water, and he starts yelling at his family, "Hey, I've got a fish over here. Come see. Come look at this." And then he continues to swim, and about 20 feet down, he hits the crest where he goes down, and you see the entire reef laid out in front of him with millions of fish. And he said he felt like the biggest idiot. He said he just wondered what the people from there were thinking as he popped up going, "I found a fish." Well, of course you found a fish. They're all over the place.
They're everywhere.
I got to do some scuba diving in Belize. Loved it. Now, when I was there was, late no, late 80s, early 90s, like 89, 90. So Belize had not become the tourist attraction that it is now.
Yeah.
And where we were was over by Belize City, but it was beautiful coastline. The only problem was it had a current going down the coastline. So our dive master set us up, and we started here, and then they picked us up way down here, and it didn't feel like you were moving.
Oh yeah, drift dives are the best. Like it's zero work. So
Oh, yeah.
You can stay down a long time if you can just maintain buoyancy and not work.
Mm-hmm. Now, maintaining buoyancy has always been difficult for me.
That is challenging.
I don't know if you're aware, but fat floats, and I have always been a big boy, so I have always had to wear a lot of weight to get my buoyancy set properly. It's always been a challenge.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who used to scuba dive, and he's got some of the coolest pictures where he's upside down with his feet touching the surface of the water.
Uh-huh.
So the picture looks like he's standing
Upside
down. Yeah, it's really cool. Or where he's just walking along the bottom of the ocean, and I could never get there. I'm always up and down and trying to figure it out. And I always struggled with that.
My favorite picture I have of me diving is a friend of mine took it, but I'm just swimming along there's no reef or anything. It's just like open water. And there's this giant eagle ray right above me, and his arm span is wider than my arms.
Oh,
and it's
that's
just like
cool.
the coolest thing.
I'll bet. Now, I've always struggled with the different rays because I know stingray, and then you've got the manta ray.
Right.
What is an eagle ray?
An eagle ray looks a lot like a manta ray, but it's black with white dots.
Okay.
And so they're little rings like this size.
Yeah. I'll tell you where scuba diving came in handy was years ago. I worked on a hazardous waste site as a lab tech, and we had to go through the whole SCBA training for being on the hazardous waste site. So it was not underwater, it was just the self-contained breathing stuff. And so they sent us down into one of these big cavernous things, and we had a project that we had to do, screw some screws, unscrew some screws, that kind of thing. We had a 5-minute canister on our belt, and then we were hosed up to the top. And as you're working, at some point the instructor turns off your air because they want to see how you're going to react. And it was amazing how many people panicked and could not reach down and turn on their 5-minute air. And so when they did that to me, it was nothing. I'm not getting any air. Okay.
I assume they warned you that this was coming.
No.
Okay.
That was
I
the
can
whole point.
understand the panic then.
Yeah, that was the whole point. Was we were not given warning because it was a training exercise, and they wanted to see that reaction.
Yeah.
And the minute I came up out of that thing, the instructor was like, "You've been scuba diving, haven't you?" I'm like, "Yes." I could tell because that's usually the people that don't panic in those situations.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's cool. Race car driving.
Yeah.
When did that start for you?
COVID.
Really?
Oh man! So in 2013, I bought a Scion FRS. I was young and had these dreams of like having a track car. I had no idea how expensive that hobby was, and I certainly could not afford it then. But in the middle of COVID, my buddy who's a member of a car club calls me. He's like, "Hey, we're doing a private track day. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Like, how much does it cost? What do I have to do?" So he sends me all the information, and I was like, "Yeah, I want to do this." And it's some basic track prep, like changing your brake fluid and making sure you've got good pads and all of that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Did it, fell in love, and so then I started going to like high performance drivers education classes and that type of stuff, and it's a blast. It's a great adrenaline rush.
So you said you didn't know how expensive of a hobby it was. How expensive of a hobby is it?
Oh, I'd have to look at my spreadsheet, but if I account the cost of the car, like that I paid for it, plus everything I've done, is probably $40,000, $50,000 at this point.
Eeh, that's more expensive than being a musician.
It is. I'm not sure that it's worth it.
Now, where do you go?
Hallet. So it's out in Jennings, Oklahoma.
Okay.
That's a cool little track.
I know a lot of people know about that track because I know Hoovie from Hoovies Garage has run some track days out there.
Yep.
And that track's been around forever.
Yep.
I remember that track from when I got out of high school. So it's been around a while. How is it as a track?
Oh, it's I say it's great. I haven't driven any other tracks.
Okay.
So, I'm very early into my run into this sport. I still can't even pass people without getting pointed by.
Oh yeah.
So it's it's very non-competitive at the moment. Racing's a strong word to describe what I'm doing. I'm just driving fast around a closed course right now.
Gotcha.
But it's a lot of fun.
Gotcha. So you're more racing with your own lap times than you are with.
Yeah, yes and no. So they'll throw you out on the track with a bunch of other people, and some of those people are slow, and some of them are fast, and I'm somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
And so, I get passed a lot, but I also get to pass a lot of people, and what's really fun is the people who drive really fast cars, like, say, souped-up Corvettes, Porsche 911s, these types of cars, right? Like, cars costing way more than my car, but the drivers are bad.
Oh.
They can be, right? And
I can
so
see that.
I love it.
A lot of money, no skill.
Yeah,
Got
and
it.
I love it when that happens because then I get to look cool on my little dash cam passing one of those super expensive cars.
That's cool. Now, do you just use your dash cam, or are you able to put other cameras on the car to get other angles?
So I've got a camera that has two cameras on it. One points towards my wheel so I can look at how my steering reaction works,
Mm-hmm.
and the other points over my hood so I can look at the two of those. And then I have a data logger where I'm monitoring a lot of different aspects of the car, and I can come back and look at how are the G-forces being affected, and do I need to change something with my suspension?
Gotcha.
Or I was having an oil cooling problem that I didn't know about, so that informed me that I needed to spend some money to address that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just constant money.
Yeah. Every problem has a solution, and they all start with a dollar figure.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
It's very similar to boats, which I don't want to talk about boats. You asked me if I wanted to talk about something boats.
I asked before the podcast if there was anything we didn't want to talk about, and you said no,
Yeah.
and challenged me. So you don't want to talk about boats.
I guess I have to now.
Yeah, now you kind of have to.
Yeah, so last year I made a terrible decision and bought a used boat. I deeply regret that decision. It was fun for a season, and then de-winterized it, had a lot of trouble getting it started, finally got it started up after catching it on fire. Then took it out to the lake for its maiden voyage for the season, and couldn't get it started out on the water, so pulled it back out of the water, got it to crank. I was like, oh great, throw it back in the water, won't start again. After 3 or 4 iterations of this, threw in the towel, called it a day. Haven't worked on the boat since.
Oh
I'm
no.
Totally frustrated with it. I want to sell it, but I can't sell it when it's not running reliably.
Right.
It's bad.
Yeah. Well,
Boats are bad. Don't buy boats.
as the old saying goes, the best and worst days, or the 2 best days in a boat owner's life, is the day he buys it and the day he sells it.
Well, I'll tell you, the worst day of boat ownership began the first day I bought it, because we're hauling it down the highway, and I didn't realize this, but the cover, it's an inboard motor. The
Okay.
cover for the motor was on a hinge, and it wasn't actually strapped down to the boat, and so we're going 40 or 50 miles an hour. It flies off of the boat onto the road, and so now I immediately have upholstery issues and all
Right.
of this. The whole ownership of this boat has been cursed. Maybe it's the boat. I'm guessing it's the hobby, and I want out of it so badly.
I always say the best thing to have is a buddy with a boat. Don't have a boat of your own. Have a buddy with a boat.
Wise advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I say the same thing about airplanes and boats. That you don't own either unless you just want to work on them all the time.
I've heard some tokens of wisdom that have a few other things in there. But
I'm sure. I'm sure there are a laundry list of things like that. Some people would argue Jeeps are like that, wouldn't they?
Mm.
Our resident Jeeper over there.
Just empty every pocket.
Well, that's very cool. And you mentioned that you do cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Where did that come from, and how does that play into all of this? Let me guess, that pays for all of this.
Oh, absolutely. that is how these things get funded. So when I was in high school, I wanted to be a hacker. I think I'd watched too many movies or something. And, this was back in the days of Napster and all of that.
Angelina Jolie was hot.
Yes.
So I can understand wanting to be a hacker.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually started doing some possibly criminal activity as a young person, and was pretty good at computers. The reason I was able to get into recording was because I was good at computers.
That makes sense.
And so, my parents discovered this problem that I had of maybe doing things I shouldn't be doing on computers, and they were wanting to harness that for good, and so they started encouraging me to look into the good side of security, and introduced me to some professors at TU, and I ended up going there studying computer science and security, and made a career of it.
So you kind of started down that path early and have stuck with it.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing that now?
I've been working for about 15 years in the space.
Wow.
It's challenging.
That's quite a while, considering how fast that particular space changes. All technology changes quick, but that one in particular, because there's constantly somebody trying to create new ways to get into things, there has to be the same constant fight to keep them out.
Yeah, I think what most people don't realize about the space is, if you're looking at, say, a corporate firewall, it's attacks constantly. Now, most of these are automated.
Right.
But, you're constantly under attack. You have no idea who your adversary is or what they're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know anything. And it's very challenging.
I'll bet.
And so, really, what I've learned over the years is security is more about process than it is about technology.
Okay.
I can give a whole spiel on that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure you could probably teach many courses on that particular topic.
Yeah. The most fun thing I do though is I run a cybersecurity competition for college students, and that's, first of all, it's what I think made me good at this, and secondly, it continues to make me good because I have to stay up on what's happening and then learn how I'm going to simulate that for the students who are competing.
That makes sense. That real world application of everyday things, that is a great way to learn things, and to have to do that to keep up, that would be a great way to stay on top of things.
Yeah.
So how often do you do that?
So we host 3 competitions between November and March every year, and then it starts out as 20 or 30 teams competing for a regional round, which is the last of the 3 competitions we host. One team from that progresses to a national round, and the team that wins that, everybody on the team gets paid internships with Raytheon.
Wow, Raytheon's big.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I never made that, but but it was still a great experience.
That's awesome. That's quite a competition if that's the end result.
Yep.
That is very cool. Very cool. So how long have you been doing that?
So I competed for 4 years, and then for the last 8 years, me and 3 other guys have been running it for our region, which is made up of Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Now, what got you into cigars?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I know that's a good question. That's why I asked. See, I'm the host here. I'm supposed to have good questions.
I had to think about it, but I do remember now. So I used to, I hang out with a bunch of friends from college, and we were friends back then. They liked to smoke little flavored cigars and stuff when we were having parties, and so I tried a couple, and then there was a little party supply place over by Park Hill that had a little humidor, and I started buying some different cigars and exploring it, and it's been a thing I do for a long time now.
Very cool. Very cool. About how long? How long have you been smoking cigars? Let me rephrase that. How long have you been smoking real cigars and not those flavored crap?
Yeah, that's easier to answer. I think about 12 to 15 years.
Okay. So you mentioned that that's one of your favorites. What are your go-tos?
Oh man, so I really like the My Father La Antiquidad. It's a really great Maduro.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my go-to. It's like $8 to $10 a stick, I think. The little short guy. And then Plasencia has, I think it's the 149 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's 140 something.
Yeah.
I can never remember if it's 142 or 149 or 147.
That's another great stick. And then the ECP Pledge that came out like a couple of years ago that was Cigar of the Year. Like, I really like that stick still.
Yeah.
And then there's a ton of Roma Craft sticks that I love. Cro-Magnon and what is it? Is it Neanderthal? Yeah, Neanderthal.
Yeah. I think it's actually Neanderthal for them instead of Neanderthal, like everybody now pronounces it. When did that happen?
I don't know. It was very confusing to me, and I still don't know what to say.
Yeah, I don't know. All of a sudden, because they were always called Neanderthals growing up, and everybody called them Neanderthals. And then somewhere when I went back to college in 99, 2000-ish, I took a archaeology class, and all of a sudden they were calling them Neanderthals. And I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah. Well, it probably has something to do with our relation to it, and if we're related to them, we don't know how to say the word correctly.
Probably. I'm trying to remember how much Neanderthal DNA I had in my DNA test. Because they did that, because that's one of the tests that they run. Have you ever done one of those?
No, I refuse to.
Oh, why?
Man, they claim the right to your DNA and anything that they produce after it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like if they're using my DNA to produce a drug or something that they're going to make billions of dollars on, then I should get a share of that.
Oh, I'm not doing anything with it. My thinking is I leave enough DNA everywhere I go that there's plenty to share.
You've done plenty of sharing of DNA, I'm sure.
But yeah, the percentage of Neanderthal DNA is part of that test, and I remember seeing it on the test, but I can't remember what the result was. I'm going to have to look that up now. But yeah, that's just one of those weird things. Oh.
So what else would be the other percent to make up that?
Oh, well, the Neanderthal DNA is this little marker more than a percentage.
Okay.
It's a marker. You either have it or you don't. And some people have it and some people don't. Because my DNA percentage is I'm according to some people 98.9% what's wrong in the world. I'm 98.9% Northern European, which means, as far as some people are concerned, everything wrong in the world. And 0.3% finish, which my wife says is bullshit. She says I finish every time.
Yeah.
I had to. I can't start that without finishing that line. I just realized what I just said.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. That's just wrong. Oh. So, well, I appreciate you doing this. Appreciate you hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I've asked you a bunch of questions. Do you have any questions?
Well, what's your...
I don't often give people that opportunity, so I'm going to give you the opportunity.
So, I actually don't know much about what you drink and that type of stuff. I know you like Scotch. What's your go-to Scotch?
My go-to Scotch is Balvenie.
Yeah.
My preference is the 21-year-old.
Okay.
Now, most of the time I can't afford to drink 21-year-old because it's gone so skyrocket high in price since I started drinking it. But the 14, the Caribbean Cask, is one of my go-tos.
I think that's what
I was like, Kate, I see you reacting to that. You like that one too?
I love that one.
Yeah, it's good because It's got some of the Scotch markers, but it's got all of those sweet notes from the Caribbean cask that give it a little bit, almost a bourbon-y feel to it, even with those Scotch markers, the slightly brininess, the other things that you expect in a good Scotch.
So like whenever you've got this 21-year Balvenie, you know, where are you going to smoke with it?
Whatever I've got. I smoke so many cigars. I love to pair cigars with my Scotch, but I'm not so picky that I have particular ones because I have found so many that go so well. Now, with the 14-year-old with the Caribbean cask, I will tell you that the Island Gem by Oscar, a perfect combination. There is something about those two that just go together well.
Yeah, like, it's got a little sweetness to it.
It does. It does. And Kevin and I cracked open a bottle the other night. Not this Kevin, my other Kevin, KP, and I cracked open a bottle the other night of Ardbeg Scorch, which was a major misnomer. I was expecting something very hot, something very spicy, something that had a lot of peat, a lot of something that would really hit you. That wasn't what it was. The Scorch had to do with the fact that it was stored in, I forget what kind of barrel, but it was a heavily charred barrel, and that's where the name Scorch came from. You poured that, and it smelled almost like champagne. It was so light and crisp. Now, it had some peatiness to it, don't get me wrong. So if you're looking for something with no peat, that's probably not the one for you.
No.
But it was light and crisp, and it was really delicious. But the perfect pairing with that was that Tatuaje P1?
Miami series.
Yeah, the Miami series P1. Tatuaje does most of their rolling, I forget where, but in one of the islands. And but they ship some of their leftover tobacco to this gentleman who lives in Miami, and he rolls specific cigars for them. And the P1 is one of their Miami series. And it was the perfect pairing because that cigar had a little bit of spice to it, but it was just enough spice that Scotch paired with it and really rolled the spice off and made the cigar a little sweeter, and it also made the Scotch taste a little smokier.
Yep.
And it was just a wonderful combination.
So, James and I did this little tasting thing a few days ago, and we decided to try cognacs. And neither of us are like big cognac people, but we decided that we wanted to, see what it's all about and try a few. And what we learned was that cognac and cigars is like the perfect pairing. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. Like 1738 was what we felt was the best with a cigar because it was just like very tame and smooth. Whereas like Hennessy and Doucet, it felt like you needed a little bit of ice or water or something in it to open it up and make it not quite so hot on the tongue.
Okay.
But yeah, 1738 with a cigar, like just straight out of the bottle, was absolutely amazing.
I'll have to try that. I have drank plenty of cognacs. I just don't know anything about cognac. It's one of those, somebody goes, hey, you want a glass of cognac? I'm like, sure. But that doesn't mean I know a thing about what I'm tasting.
I generally associate it with very sweet flavors and all of that. And what I learned that day is that my understanding of cognac was completely incorrect.
You were probably doing the same thing that a lot of people do, and that is when they hear cognac, they think the taste of brandy.
That was exactly what was going on.
And so they confuse those two flavor profiles. Because I've heard that a lot from a lot of people. Because brandy is a very sweet, very not hot alcohol wise at all, unless you get something really crazy, and that's what people tend to describe cognac as, and that's when you know they've confused them. So I bet that's exactly what had happened.
Yeah.
So did you learn a lot about cognacs, or
I learned that I don't dislike them as much as I thought I did.
okay?
Which is a good thing because now I've got something else I can put with a cigar.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually quite affordable.
Are they?
They can be. They can also be expensive.
Oh, I'm sure. Everything.
I mean that 1738 was, I think it was like a $40 bottle or something.
Oh, that's
so
not
it's
bad at all.
Very reasonable.
Yeah, that's very reasonable.
But yeah, like it was great.
Very cool. Very cool. And I know you're a bit of a beer guy. You make beer, don't you?
Yeah, I do a little bit of brewing.
Okay. How long have you been doing that?
Since I was 19, because I could buy the ingredients, but I couldn't buy beer. And so.
How old are you now?
I'm 35 now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Statute of limitations is right.
Yeah, that's far gone. Far gone.
Just had to check before we outed you on YouTube.
So yeah, I've been brewing for a while. I haven't actually brewed that many batches, like probably 20 or so over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got back into it this year though. I hadn't brewed in probably 7 years or so, and taken some time off from work and decided I was going to build a kegerator and get back into brewing. And so I started my first batch, and it finished this week. And so I've been enjoying that so far.
I'll bet.
There's nothing like having 5 gallons of beer in your house.
Well, see, I am an okay beer guy. I like dark beers and stouts.
Mm-hmm.
I have brewed beer, but I did the Mr. Beer kind of thing, and then I tried something a little nicer, a little fancier. But I was never enough of a beer guy to make it worth my time and energy to do that. Now I brewed. I don't know if you call it brewing wine.
I'm not sure what that term is.
Vintnered wine.
Sure, yeah.
I made wine.
Yeah.
Actually, I crushed grapes and they made the wine. All I did was made sure nothing went wrong, and that was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed doing that, and I like making fruit wines, the sweet fruit wines.
You were telling me about that the other day. I'm kind of interested in trying it now.
Well, years ago, eons ago, I found a website where a couple of guys who were master vintners had gotten so irritated with the online winemaking community because it seemed like every time somebody wanted to start making wine, everybody and their dog went, well, you have to have this, and you have to have this, and you have to do this, and it was going to cost them thousands of dollars to make a little batch of some fruit wine. And they went, that's bull. You don't need any of that. What you need is a jug, some yeast, and a balloon.
A balloon?
A balloon.
Oh, is that for like a vapor trap?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And that's exactly what they said they said, if you're using grapes, you don't even need the yeast because they're on the outside skin of the grapes. The yeast gather the grapes gather those yeasts naturally. But obviously most people use yeast because that makes a better wine. But if you're using something like apple, and that was what they suggested you start with, was go buy a jug of apple juice in a glass jug, pour in some yeast, put your balloon over the top. When the balloon got big, pull it off, let the air out, and put it back on. When it quits getting big, drink it. That's really all there is to it. They said anything else you do, everything else that anybody does to wine is just an attempt to make it more consistently good. But to make it, that's all there is to it. And I liked that so much, I went, that's it, I'm going to try it.
That's awesome.
And so I did it that way the first time, and then I started buying hundreds of dollars worth of equipment, kind of like you do.
Yep. Yeah, beer doesn't have to be that expensive to make either. There's plenty of ways to do it cheap. I started with just plastic jugs from the store full of water, and then I'd ferment right inside of that jug, and that made it so much cheaper than buying big glass vessels and all this stuff. You don't need all of that. It's easy.
I think that's what runs, maybe not anymore, but it used to back when I was looking into brewing. That's what ran a lot of people off, was so many people were saying you have to have the glass, you have to decontaminate it in a very specific way, and it was such a process that everybody was describing that it scared a bunch of people off.
Yeah, Well, I think it's fair to be worried about it. But I happen to be a person who enjoys process, so to me it's easy. Like, it's just kind of cathartic to actually have to go through the process of cleaning everything and all that is fun.
I get that. Now, are you a note taker?
Not when I'm brewing, no.
Okay.
No.
Because I know some guys that they detail note every single little thing.
Yeah, I don't do that. Like, I might measure the gravity of it right before I start fermenting, but half the time I don't even do that. Like, I just let it ferment until it stops producing CO2, and once it stops, I'm like, oh, hey, I have beer. It can be very easy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Now, so I'm picking up a note here, and that is you made your own kegerator, you do your own car work,
Yep.
you build computers. There was something else that you've done that's very mechanical. Are you mechanically inclined, or is that something that you've just always had a knack for?
I think that I'm less mechanically inclined than I like to think I am.
Okay.
But I'm willing to fail.
That is important.
Yeah.
That is important.
I think I just have like that engineering thing going on, and so like I'm absolutely willing to try almost anything, even if it might kill me, at least once.
Okay. I get that. Well, that's cool. Well, thank you for being with us. I'm sure we will have you back, because I'm sure Kevin's going to want to sit down with you at some point and do another podcast, and we'll probably have you on when we actually put out the live album.
Sounds
So
fun.
we'll have you back. Now, at the end of every episode, you haven't seen an episode, so you don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
We always go back and forth and say, if you want to find me online, here's how you can find me. Do you want people to find you online, or do you want this to be a, hey, I'm Brady and we're done?
I mean, you can find me online, but I don't know how to tell you to find me, so if you find me, that's cool.
More importantly, you can find him at any of the cigar bars here in Tulsa most of the time, because I ran into you at the Classic downtown, and now you're a member out here at Omerta with me, and I think we've been at both places within the last 24 hours.
Yes.
So we enjoy our cigar bars.
That's right.
Well, I'm CR Parsons on CR Parsons Comedian or CR Parsons Comedy, depending on the social media. You can email the Smokey Guys at the Smokey Guys. Is it the Smokey Guys or just Smokey Guys? It's bad when I don't have KP here, because he keeps me straight on a lot of this stuff. Smokey Guys or the Smokey Guys at gmail.com. You can email me personally. That's probably easier because I know that email address. It is booking@crparsons.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do the little bell thing so you get notifications when we do these. Also, just a reminder, I do have that cigar logbook and journal available on Amazon. It is the cigar journal for the working man. Yeah, cigar journal for the working man. Or you can just look up my name under authors and find that kind of stuff. I think that's about it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoyed it very much. And until we see you guys next time, stay smoky.